Hi, friends, and welcome to another episode of Lionsgate Podcast with Sahdi and Omni. I'm Omni.
And I'm Sahdi.
And today's episode is going to be all about divination, tarot, mediumship, and all things spiritual. But first, I want to introduce our very special guest, Lexi. Say hi.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
We're so excited to have you here.
Yeah, so Lexi, she does in-depth tarot readings, mini readings, and has a website. And we're going to put her website in the description along with our link tree to our social medias and Sahdi's website. So if you want to book a reading after this with either of them, hit up those links. Whether you're beginning at doing tarot, if you don't know anything, or you're very experienced, or you're semi-experienced with divination and spirituality, listen to this episode because you will not regret it.
Yeah, we're going to cover a lot of things. Like Omni said, even if you're just curious about tarot and psychic and mediumship and things like that, or you're experienced, we're all different. And so just stay tuned and hear us out.
Yeah. So I just met Lexi, but Sahdi and Lexi have been friends for many years. So like, how did y'all meet?
We met through her husband, actually.
Yes.
He was friends with my son. And he just called me one day out of the blue and he was like, Mama, I want you to meet my new girlfriend. I think you'll love her.
Yeah, and I had heard so much about her.
Yeah, so from the second I met her, we just had this connection. And I think it was on the first or second time that I met you, I gave you a reading.
It was literally the first time.
I think it was the first time.
Yeah, and I was like in tears. Like it was such a good reading. Sahdi's such a good reader. And I just remembered I was so nervous at first. I was literally shaking in my boots, about to have an anxiety attack. I grew up in a Protestant Christian family, so all of this stuff was so foreign to me and was like, oh, you're messing with stuff and you're going to open doors that you don't know nothing about.
I remember that.
So I was like, I was shaking, but I wanted it and I was scared, but it was the unknown. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
Her reading was so fucking good. I just remember thinking about her reading for almost a year after. Things that she had said were happening in the present. They were also certain points where you're reading. I don't know if I even ever told you this. We're coming up years after we're getting to the core of one of my really deep cycles that I knew I needed to let go of, but when it's family, it's kind of hard. And so it was super intense. But no, yeah, she's fucking phenomenal.
I had that experience with her too, where I was just bringing it up, where in my very first reading with you, we brought up summertime being a big pivotal moment for me. And I was thinking it was last summer that it would be. And then this summer when we were talking about transformation and all that, and in the end of summer, you saw my spirit guide celebrating with me. They said summertime. They didn't say that.
Which summer.
Exactly. Yeah. So same thing. You just keep seeing it line up and line up. But you actually do readings, from what I've experienced, a little bit different. Now, we got the pleasure where me and Sahdi got to get a reading from you, but you did the digital one where you, with our permission, tap into our energy, and you sent this really detailed, amazing reading to each of us. Yeah, we were both like, literally, Sahdi was like, did you get it yet? And I was like, let me check. And then I was like, I have it saved. I took screenshots. Yeah.
Omni got hers first and I got mine last night.
Yeah, she got hers super late. I'm telling you, you're getting your reading by tonight. And I stayed up last night because I like to go through and I like to edit and make sure that everything is very flowy and understandable, because when you're channeling, sometimes you're going so fast that you're just trying to get everything out.
Yeah.
Going back and making sure everything was good.
It's very obvious that you put a lot of time and effort, and it's very meticulous. So,
yeah.
And I'm sure it's different because me and you have never met, and you did my reading. You hit it nail on the head. I know we didn't talk about it, but I did tell that to Sahdi, but you've known Sahdi for years.
Right.
And so I'm sure that's a little weird doing readings.
Yeah, it was almost full circle because obviously me and Sahdi, we are actually really good friends and I love her.
Yeah.
So we go back and forth a lot. Something that I was trying out that I just wanted to make sure made sense and that people were really understanding where it was coming from and how the core of it was to get to like deep rooted healing. And I wanted to make sure I got yours first because we hadn't met.
Yeah.
And so I knew that immediately when people hear that I already know Sahdi, I love Sahdi, I know her, that they're going to be like, she already kind of knows what she's got going on, right? But when I do it for you, I have no idea anything about you. You don't know who you are at your core. I don't know your traumas. I don't know anything like that. But when I tap in, all of a sudden I know all of this stuff. And I'm getting you all these messages to get to the core and the roots of really tough and heavy situations so that deep healing can be made so you can progress in a very peaceful way, if that makes sense.
And I've noticed that, Lexi, we're similar in so many ways, but our reading techniques are completely different.
Absolutely.
I got my reading last night and I was in tears. It was just so beautiful, but it cuts to the core
Yeah.
of what's really going on. There's no sugar coating it when it comes to your readings.
They're
and it's
very
like
honest. Yeah.
very honest, very, I wouldn't want to say brutal at all.
But it is.
With some things, it might sting a little bit to
Right.
hear, but the way you do it is you're just so passionate with it. And you're like, and this is why it's happening.
Right.
And I loved at the end, and I don't know if you do that for everybody or if it just came on my reading, but you attached 2 songs to it.
Yep.
Yeah, I
At
do.
the end. And after I read everything and I played those songs, one of the songs I'd only thought of one particular way, but after the reading and she was tapping into something completely different, I heard the song differently.
Yeah.
And it resonated with me, and I heard that song like I'd never heard it before.
And you connect to music.
I
Well,
do
big time.
a lot of times. Well, within everything in my life, music is life for me. But music and lyrics and things like that will come to me while I'm doing a reading as well. So I
Yeah.
thought that was really cool that you put that on the end.
Yeah, and I love that because when they send me songs, they're always very spot on for what people need in order to understand, because music brings a whole new level of understanding than words could. You have not only a soundtrack with these different beats that speak to your soul and your body, but then you have these words from somebody you have no idea about, but you just connect. And so music's super important, and
Well,
I
they're
think it's a good
frequencies.
way of
Yeah, music is frequencies.
Yeah.
Babies will dance without ever knowing because music is frequencies. It's the universal language.
Yeah.
It does reach us on a soul level.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
ingrained in our DNA.
Yeah.
I'm not going to be secret about mine. I got Landslide and I love that song.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it came through so hard, and it's like, I've been. That song means a lot to me too. With Sahdi's, hers just came up too, and they're not songs that I think of very often too. So I always know where it's coming up, how it's going to benefit. And actually, the one that you really connected to, because they had brought up another one,
Well,
and
both
want
of
that
them
other
did.
one. Yeah. Well, maybe I should take this one off, and they're like, no, keep it. And I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah, I connected to both of them.
Yeah.
On a soul level.
Sahdi, you've told me that when spirits or energies come through, that sometimes they show you symbols or it's like a metaphor. We've talked about on the show before where this kid's tooth was loose. They were showing you a kid wiggling his tooth to represent one of your friends, family members passing away. You got to get there quick. It's going to be pretty quick. So for you, Lexi, when spirit comes through or you start channeling them, is it the same? Because I've noticed through other mediums that I've watched through TikTok or YouTube or whatever, they talk about how they get shown certain symbols and it's like they create their own language.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. White rose means old lady. I always know that means old lady.
Right.
So for you, what's your language?
It's definitely when you're getting into spirituality, you're learning a whole new language. At first, you just kind of have to figure out the basics in order to be able to get certain meanings, right? I don't think you create this language right away, but over time, you end up seeing different things at different times during different situations. And then you know exactly what's happening when that comes up again. So for me, I'll see videos, I'll see images. People will show me their face, they'll show me their body. I've seen one person as their actual skeletal form, if that makes sense. I had a guy moon me one time because he was talking really seriously with his 2 daughters when he had passed. He was just a goofball. The conversation was way too serious. He was over it, and he was like, they're crying, I don't like this. And so he mooned me. And so I start busting out laughing in this super serious moment. And when I told him both of them died, they were like that's our
my
dad.
dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's
so
that
it's
confirmation too.
Absolutely.
I remember in the beginning when I was first starting to learn tarot, I actually would only do it for friends and family, and then word of mouth spread, and I would do it for people that I knew or whatever. But when I started branching out, it was like I had to validate myself because I didn't really trust myself back then. I was
Yeah.
like, well, maybe I'm just knowing this because it's my friend or family.
Right.
Or maybe I just know them so well that I can pick up on their body language, or is this something
Absolutely.
coming from myself? So I ended up going on Facebook groups, and people would post anonymously and ask a question. And then I would try to answer it as an unapproved reader. And that would give me validation every single time.
I love that you're talking about that because I remember when I had so many questions just a year ago, you brought that up. And it's funny too, because when I talk about your readings, even though we know each other, we've had readings where it's like, you don't know my grandma. I had you tap into an ex, but you didn't know our relationship at all. I just said it was an ex that passed away. And you were like, he's not, I don't know how to tell you this. It wasn't a good relationship at all. Anyways.
I think it's human nature to doubt yourself at first. So that's a normal part of it.
And I think a lot of us are told for a long time that it's wrong. In trusting yourself over a higher power is wrong. When we're put in a space where we're like, well, the things that I'm thinking, they're real. They're making sense. And what's funny is I also started off a similar way. I read my neighbor first, and then I was on TikTok. And I practiced on TikTok because I could reach so many people so quick. I got such fast practice. I just would give out free readings, hella fucking free readings. And
that's what I did for
drains
years.
you, and which is why protection is so important.
Oh, yeah. Lexi, what do you do to ground yourself before a reading or protect yourself before and after a reading? What's important, do you think, for beginners or maybe people that have been doing this for a while but never thought to do that?
I always try and cleanse my space first. That's always a huge deal for me. I like to make sure that no residual energy is in, and I can set the tone for a new day and make sure that my readings that way are going really well. And then I knock on my deck because I like to clear my deck. For certain decks require certain things from me. And so depending on which deck I feel called to use, I'll do whatever ritual comes with that deck. Usually I'll ground, and then I'll talk to my higher self, my shadow self, my inner child, and I'll just thank all of them, inner teen, my inner 20-year-old, all these different versions of myself that helped me get to this place, because now I do what I'm passionate about and what I love, and it was all at almost the sacrifice of those versions of myself. So I really take time to appreciate them. Trigger warning, but I was really suicidal when I was younger, and so seeing myself now, when I was a kid, I would have thought I was so fucking cool.
That's so beautiful.
You know what I mean? Being able to appreciate the different versions of me that went through so much shit, and being able to be like, you know, we didn't do this, and now look at us. You have a great partner. You have great children. Your bills are paid. I have nothing to complain about, so I show gratitude. And I just make sure that whoever I'm reading for today, make sure that their higher self comes through, and people who want to see them come through in their best light, like who want them to accomplish their big picture goals on their soul contract, doing affirmations with myself so that I'm not second guessing myself. Because even to this day, like when I sent your readings, I was shitting bricks, and I was like, what if they fucking message me and they're like, this was bullshit? I think that's just human nature, though. As you continue to grow, you doubt yourself less and less.
Right.
But still, sometimes I look at it and I'm like, I feel fucking crazy. I feel like a little bit weird, you know what I mean? But I'm grateful. Sometimes it still throws me off how much spirit can work with you. And I also have a ritual with my protection oil that I make. I also have another oil that I always put on every day as a ritual. And I have certain rituals to take care of myself to make sure I'm not being drained of my energy. After I'm done, I also cleanse, and then I tell them thank you for coming, and like allow them to go back, because I feel like if you don't cleanse afterwards, it's like their guides can stay around. And I've noticed this, at least for myself. I have kids, so I don't really like anybody's energy to just linger unless we have like a personal relationship type of thing and it's somebody that I'm close to. But other than that, I cleanse, I tell them thank you, and I say, you ain't got to go home, but you got to get the hell up out of here.
Right. You turn on the song Closing Time.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been doing it for so long. I always cleanse it in some way, clear the air. And then as I'm putting my cards in order, I always start in upright position. That's just how I do
too,
it.
yeah.
And so I get my cards out and I put them upright. So I go through every single card. And as I'm doing them, I just have this little thing that I say inside of my head. It's like a little mantra. And everybody's different. So there's no right or wrong way to do it. But I tap on my cards 3 times too. When I'm done, boom, boom, boom.
Yep.
That's crazy that you said that, because I do it too. And I have such a connection with my higher self that I just tap into my higher self and boom, protected.
Yeah.
And then I do a ritual afterwards to cleanse the area and say goodbye and show gratitude to the spirits that have come through and thank them for
the information.
For the knowledge and the information. And
so for me, I don't read for other people. I'm learning still. And I have this question, and then I'll go into some of the things I've learned so far. In your opinion, for both of you, do you have to be gifted your first deck?
I get asked that a lot.
I do too.
For me, I say no. It just happens that my first deck was gifted to me by an old manager that I had. And she just randomly gave me the deck. And she's like, these don't want me anymore. They want you. And it's funny because you'll have friends and other people outwardly that'll notice things within you that you don't even notice within yourself.
Yeah.
Sometimes. It was the
OSHA deck.
It was the OSHA's. Yep. And he has the same birthday as me as well.
That's so cool.
So December 11th, Sagittarius.
Yeah.
Which I thought was a cool synchronicity.
Yeah.
That came with that.
Yeah, I think that being gifted a deck, and people can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's more of a Wiccan tradition to be gifted a deck, kind of like they have the threefold law. And if that's what you believe in, then, you know, do what you believe in. But a lot of people don't have access to people who are around them that practice spirituality that could gift them a deck. So you're taking all these people who have this calling, and you're saying, if you don't do it this way, then you can't do it. And I don't like that rhetoric. If somebody wants a deck and they don't have anybody to gift them a deck, I don't think that should be necessary. I feel like if you feel called to something, do it. If you don't like it, you don't ever have to do it again. But
and who's to say that the universe isn't the one gifting you that deck?
Yeah, truly. I gifted myself my first deck.
Same. For my experience, my mom had a palm reader come to my 5th grade birthday, and I think that's where that deck came from, but I remember doing readings for my friends. But what I would do is I thought you had to look up the meaning in the book. Up until like not even that long ago, I thought you had to know every single card and what it means. And for me, that's overwhelming.
Right. Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, that is an overwhelming thing. So really just sitting down and studying each card, like Sahdi, you suggested in a past episode, pulling a card, putting it under your pillow.
I sleep with all my decks as soon as I get them. Every single deck. I connect with it in that way. I let it go through my dreams. I let it experience me as a person through my subconscious. Then I'm very connected to the deck after that.
So when I get a deck, I do the same thing because each deck has a different personality, it has a different energy about it, has a whole different vibe. So I have to get to know the vibe of that deck, and the deck has to get to know me. It works better that way.
I do think it's important to get an overall understanding of the cards over time.
Yes.
At first, it can be really overwhelming. So I suggest like starting with the numerology, and you were talking about elements. I think that's a great place to start.
So to break it down, for me, learning, not only looking at the picture and knowing, okay, well, this has water in it. Water is connected to emotion, but also breaking down each suit representing an element helps me understand what the card can mean and helps me read it. For instance, Pentacles is about security, Earth, which is grounding. I think of it that way. So it's very grounding, security. Wands is fire, which is action. And you think about fire, fire is action. When you do a ritual, you want it to happen quickly. You think about fire. That's how I tie it to that one. For Swords, it's an air sign because communication. Cups is a water sign because it's emotion. And when someone ever tells me that they're a water sign, I'm like, oh, you're emotional. Not in a bad way. And then like kind
It's
of
just how it's registering
in my head. And so for me, somebody who's not as experienced as the both of you.
The more you practice, the more you will get in touch with your intuition. It's just like anything. The more you do consistency and persistence, also with figuring out card meanings and stuff like that, asking spirit to show you a card's meaning throughout your day. So you kind of get to experience the card in a day-to-day kind of sense.
Yeah, and if there's like 78 cards in the deck, that would take you less than 3 months if you just pulled one card every single day. And I would even recommend playing with your deck. You know, just be playful with it.
I shuffled mine forever.
Don't be so like, I have to study this and learn what this meaning is. Pick up the card and study the card yourself. What feeling does it give you? What does the picture mean to you?
My partner did that, and I was like, that's not how you're supposed to do that. And Sahdi, you're like, yes, it is.
I'm like, that's exactly how you're supposed to do it. You know, and then you could look up the meaning, and then you could even go online and you could be like, give me somebody else's interpretation of it or whatever, and then sleep with that card under your pillow. You could dream about it.
He did that. He likes the Thoth deck. He likes the, what do you call it? The original deck.
Rider-Waite.
So he likes that because a lot of thought put into each card. He's helped me through a lot of it because he's like, well, look, that person, they're blindfolded. What do you think that means? And there's water behind them. You're turning your back on those emotions because water represents emotions. Cups represents emotions as well. So just knowing the symbolism between those will help. And so you don't have to know the meaning. If you pull Two of Swords and you're just like, I don't know what this means, I got to look it up. No, look at the card, remember the symbolism, and it'll really help you through. And each person has a different message. Like Two of Swords to me today will mean something different for me a year from now, or to Sahdi today, we could both pull the Two of Swords, mean something completely different. So it's very personal. But then also Sahdi and her man and me and my guy were over at my house. We decided to pull cards for each other.
We were drinking.
We were drinking. Okay,
it was kind of like our version of spin the bottle.
Okay, but this was the night I tapped into my higher self, and I had a headache
badass.
that day, and so did you. And I pulled rum down. If I have a headache, I don't touch alcohol or anything because I get migraines sometimes. And so I was like, it's really weird. I really, really want a rum drink. And it comes to find out it's connected to my higher self because we were having a reading about my higher self. But when we all drank that night, and we
almost
were
like an offering. I love that.
Yeah, it was beautiful. It was awesome. And we were doing readings for each other, and I learned so much. Like, I don't think you realize how much I learned that night, that it's not so scary.
We would just pick one card. Pick
a
card for Chris, and then he would read it, and then Chris would pick a card for somebody else. And we just kept doing that with one card.
I love that.
And Chris was like, I've never done tarot before, but he was amazing at it.
Yeah.
You know, just reading the interpretation of the card and how he felt.
Yeah. Me and my guy did this game, and it was really intimate and really beautiful. So if you have a partner that's also into tarot or spiritual or whatever, we ended up going up to the park under a big, beautiful tree. And I had my favorite deck and he had his favorite deck. And so I shuffled my deck, asked it a question about our relationship. And then I'd pull out my card, and then he would find the same card in his deck, and we put it side by side. Then I would interpret it using both cards, which are pretty similar, but they're different artists. So it gave me a more shared picture. And I shuffled his deck, he shuffled mine, and we both tapped into each other's spirit guides beforehand, just saying, hey, we're not recognizing reverse cards because it takes us longer to interpret.
Yeah,
and we are
Mm-hmm.
trying to get you guys together to help us grow in this relationship. So they understood the assignment.
Right.
He would do that, and then he would ask a question through his deck, shuffle, pull a card. I would find the same back and forth. And it was such a beautiful experience. I highly recommend it. I do want to say that when I first started, I was like, Sahdi, how do you know if a card gets pulled in reverse? Do you keep your cards upright or do they mix up? I mixed up my deck so where some cards are upside down and some are right side up. And you're like, never really been asked that way. You're like, I just put it in reverse when I have the feeling that it needs to be in reverse. And I was like, oh.
Mine will flip in reverse. If a card's upside down, say not the actual card, the other side of the card, that is just the print, I will flip it, and whatever way it lands, I know is the way it's supposed to be.
Okay.
What's funny is that sometimes it's an in-between. Somehow the card will fall and it'll go upright. And so you know that there's this duality of the choices
or
that you have to make.
Even. Sometimes
I
the
love
card flips
sideways. Yeah, and I read sideways for sure because it's always an in-between stage. The two options you can make. The best thing for me is I want to give you all the information I can about both of your options, because at the end of the day, this is not, I'm going to predict everything that's going on with you. This is, you have two options. You have your free will, and you get to choose which path you're going to take, but it's up to you. I'm not choosing that path for you. I'll just tell you how each one's going to end up and how it's going to benefit or the consequences that might come with that. And I give all that information.
Kind of.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, you've done that diagonal before, and I was like, what the fuck what is that? I mean,
you can get
not in a
fancy
bad
with it.
judgy way, but in a like, that's cool.
Right.
Yeah.
You know? That's cool, because I've never heard anybody else explain that. It'll go sideways.
Yeah, and neither one of us use
layouts.
Yeah, I don't use layouts. And Sahdi also doesn't use layouts.
Which we're not saying that
there's anything wrong with that.
There's anything wrong with it, because we're all different. And see, that's the beauty of doing tarot. We bring a different energy with who we are as people. It's really easy for people that are just starting out to be like, oh my gosh, this is so much to learn. I have to learn all these layouts.
And the layouts are just there to help.
Yeah.
And I think people overthink it a lot. They're just there so that you can see past, present, and future, so you can get a big picture idea of what's going on, right?
Yeah.
Or,
so if the layouts help you, go for it, use them, but it's not necessary.
But we're chaotic, and we're just not we're just not normal. And
it's like too intimidating for me.
I want to get to all the details. I want to know what's going on. That's just me being honest. I want to fucking know what's going on. Don't try and skip me on anything. And if I feel you holding back, if you're comfortable, like, release so I can get in and we can actually fix this.
Yeah.
A lot of the time I'm getting all the tea. I've had spirit come through and be like, they're just staying with them because their partner gives good. You know what I'm saying?
That's
like, and
give me all the tea.
Yeah. And I'm like, oh, so now I see why you're staying. She's staying because he knows how to do something else. And I'm like, oh.
And it's so funny too, because we both have our uniqueness about us.
Absolutely.
You're like that. And for me, I feel like, how did you compare like a deep tissue massage?
My readings are kind of like deep tissue massage, where they hurt at first and it kind of afterwards you feel the effects. But long term, it brings so much peace. You're not hurting as bad because you dealt with it and you're processing through those knots, which is like this trauma or these deep rooted roots. I like to compare it to weeds. You can keep cutting off that top, but that fucking root's just going to keep growing.
Yeah.
And so I'm here to help you figure out how we can pull this root out and then remind you to refill that space with love so that you have an empty space. So when you're ready to start something new, you have the space to do that. Because if you keep holding on to that old stuff, it's taking up space in your garden that could be used for something that's actually going to grow.
And when I'm doing readings, sometimes mine are like that too. I have to go down deep.
Absolutely.
But I think I have more of a gentler
you
vibration
have such a gentle,
to it. It's kind of like,
but you need that. Like sometimes you don't need
like you've already been through enough. Let me
you just
comfort you
and love. For me, like I feel called to those darker aspects because I've been in the dark for a really long time, and so I can relate to it. If I see some fucked up shit with your partner, you're going to hear about it. If I'm seeing they're manipulating you, if I'm seeing that they're taking their power over you, they're trying to control you, if I see that they're being toxic, if I see that they're got some weird shit going on, I'm going to tell you there's some weird shit going on and keep your eyes peeled. But a lot of the time it's me reaffirming people. Most of the time it's just miscommunication.
Yeah.
Somebody's feelings got hurt, so now I'm going to be petty, or I'm being toxic because it's coming from a root of your own problem. It's projecting onto somebody.
Yeah.
A lot of the times it's not even that their partners are cheating. It's the fact that they are so self-conscious that they don't feel like they're worthy of not being hurt. And that's the root. And that's where I come from. I want to get to that root so we can pull that out.
And we're going to the root of the same place, but I feel like I'm getting from
it's like ethereal.
Like,
that's a word I would give it. It's like being walked through this beautiful space with these beautiful nostalgic memories when you're getting a Sahdi reading and you're getting all this beauty. And then she kind of is like, okay, well, let's go into this room real quick. It's going to make you uncomfortable, but we're going to come out and everything's going to be okay. And we're going to work through this and you've got it. You know what I mean? And I think that's also needed. I think that I am not as good at tapping into very vulnerable emotions. I can get emotional, but even my birth chart is masculine. I just have that more masculine energy. When I pull cards for myself, resembling myself, it's usually the Emperor, which is funny because I'm also an Aries. So like it always fits. And 4 is my number.
It's the first one.
And there's so much signs. There's so much symbolism. If you just take a second away from your phone and away from the distractions and the bullshit of the world, you will see the shit for yourself.
Yeah.
I tell people I would never pressure anybody into doing anything they don't want to do. Anytime you get a reading from me, I always ask for consent first.
Yeah.
Even if you come to me and you're like, I need a reading about my partner, are they doing this and that? I'm not getting into your partner's energy like that, but I can get into your relationship and figure out what's going on about that.
We talked about when you tapped into somebody's energy.
I was giving a reading to a guy and he was asking me about a bunch of different girls, and got to the last girl and I tapped into her energy, and immediately I got taught a lesson because the atmosphere in the room changed. It got really hot.
Yeah.
His face turned pale. He started sweating. He passed out. He fell off of the chair and onto the floor.
As he should.
She was protected.
Yep.
And she did. Her guys did not appreciate
no.
me getting in to the energy, and they attacked him.
Yeah.
So that was like a really big lesson that I learned.
I think the point here is that there's not one size fits all. No. That if you've had a reading before and it went bad, it doesn't mean that all readings are bad. Is that you just probably needed to see somebody else that fits you. It's kind of like therapy.
You have to find somebody that makes you feel comfortable. You have to find somebody that makes you feel safe. Some people need more nurturing talk, where some people just need to say, hey, dude, you're fucking up. This is what you need to do to fix it.
Yeah. It reminds me because I sent my friend Tam, who lives in Australia, I sent her a tarot deck. And she was like, I don't like this tarot deck. It's mean. I said, it doesn't sugarcoat anything because it tells you like it is. It was telling her, get out of her work environment. She's out of that now. I'm so proud of her. She's in a loving, grateful environment.
Right.
But at the time, she didn't need that. She needed a more nurturing thing.
But it's so crazy the way decks are and the energy. Until you've actually had your own deck, you think this sounds crazy now that decks have their own energy.
Yeah.
Do you remember when I was telling you about the Spirit of the Divine deck?
Oh, yeah.
You thought it was just because I was a beginner at that point. I'm like, this deck has its own energy, and I'm telling you right now, it's very stubborn
energy.
Yeah, she's very stern, very my way is the right way, so do what the fuck I say.
Yeah, and I was thinking, I have a lot of decks, and I've been doing this for a really long time. And as she was telling me this, I'm like smiling, nodding my head. Okay,
like you have no idea what you're talking about.
What are you talking about? But I love the deck, so I ordered it, and I got it. When the deck came, and I went into my room, and I could hear this female's voice.
Yeah, and
she was like this, that, the other thing. But we found out that she not only wrote the book for it, that she did all of the artwork. So much of her energy and probably her guides and her higher self was so embedded within this.
Yeah. And her energy is so beautiful. And that deck only likes to be cleaned with cinnamon too. It's a very picky deck, and it's so...
Mine doesn't like to be cleansed at all.
Yeah,
I have a crystal that I use with it, a really dark crystal.
I have a different deck that does that.
This deck doesn't like to come out in the sun. It only likes to come out at night and with only certain people.
I'm getting
to
goosebumps.
work with women more than it does
Oh,
men.
yeah.
I was thinking this girl's crazy. Like, well,
Yeah.
like,
She don't know what the fuck she's talking about.
Sahdi talks to spirits, and she thought somebody else was crazy.
I know. And so then I got the deck, and I was like, oh my God, she's fucking right. Yeah. And so I called you.
Yeah, you did.
I have to admit, I didn't understand what you were talking about, but you had it on point. And then, like, I remember my son, he's into tarot as well. And he got a deck one time and he brought it to my house. He's like, Mom, I need this out of my house. What do you think about this deck? And I grabbed it, and it was only like 22 cards in there. This is kind of a weird deck. And I started looking through it, and he's like, it's too heavy for me. He said it even feels heavy.
Damn.
And I was like, oh, it's the major arcana. And it's only that. And it loved me. I still use this deck to this day. I'm like, ooh, this is my kind of energy. But he couldn't use it. It was too strong for him. Sometimes you'll get decks and it just doesn't resonate with you.
Yeah. And before I even got in really deep to spirituality, my husband's family knows a lot about tarot as well. And his sister's husband comes from a Wiccan family. Like I said, they have their own ways of doing things and how things are supposed to be done. So he learned that way. So he was like, hey, you need to be gifted a deck and all this stuff. I went to Sahdi and I was like, hey, dude, do I need to be gifted a deck?
Give me a deck, girl.
Well, no, right.
You have like
Tap
100
the
of
fuck
them.
in. Come on. No, I'm just kidding. But no, I was just like, I don't have anybody to gift me a deck, but I've been feeling called to this for years and just kind of repressing it. I don't want to do that. I was so fucking picky about my first deck. Really? I looked for years. I'm not even fucking kidding. I looked for at least a solid year because I could not find a deck that I wanted.
I've never felt that way either. You know, you check with your spirit guides, you check with your higher self, and you get that gut feeling.
Yeah.
You know, I always use the term, I feel it in my bones. And when I say that, that's saying it's straight from my higher self. I know.
Right. And that's why it's my advice that you go with your own instincts on things, because you can go online and you'll find 100 different people saying 100 different things.
Absolutely.
And we're all different.
Yeah.
When we're dealing with spirituality and stuff like that, it comes to all of us differently.
Absolutely.
And I've made mistakes, so don't be afraid of making mistakes. I remember, this is before I was actually practicing. A friend of mine called and said, I need you to help my friend. And I'd never met this lady before, and her husband had just died, and that's all I knew. So I get over to the house, and I'm kind of excited because I'm still in the validating myself phase, and I didn't know how to protect myself. I didn't know, and I'm like, I'm going to go over there. I don't know anything about this lady. This is going to be confirmation to me if he comes through. And the whole way I'm just praying on the way over there to my spirit guides, to my higher self. Let me be an open channel. Let me give the right, correct information to this family, to this woman. I get over there and I start doing my thing, and I can feel him immediately. And we go outside to talk for a few minutes. So I go out of the back door. I'm like, come on. The wife was like, what are you doing? And I was like, your dog. Don't you have a little dog around here somewhere? And she's like, no, my dog died right after my husband did. It was his dog. It was this little white dog. And she's like, oh my God. So I hadn't even started channeling yet. We hadn't even started yet. And I was already picking up on this guy's dog. And she shows me a picture of him holding the dog while he's got, like, he had cancer and he died. So the whole thing was just like super crazy. I mean, it felt like in a movie. Like, I can't make this up.
No.
The lights were flickering on and off. His daughter was there, and I was seeing this race car going around the track. And he was like, go faster, baby, no brakes. And she started crying because her and her dad used to build the little race cars together, and they would go racing.
Oh, I'm going to cry.
And he's like, no brakes. And that's what he would say to her. And I was just like overwhelmed that this guy was coming through so clearly. Yeah. And I was there for like 2 hours. But what I didn't know was I was so open, and I was just so excited about having this person come that he attached to me. And for 3 days he would not stop. I was in the shower and he's, tell her this, tell her that, and tell my daughter this. And he was just, I had no way of blocking it. And even though it started to become scary for me, I felt like Whoopi Goldberg. I swear to God. I was like, oh my God, this guy's going to be right now. Like, what do I have to do? What's my mission? Even though that was a little bit scary, I am so glad that happened to me.
Absolutely.
It was such a learning experience.
And he was
for
at
me.
least a nice one.
Oh yeah, he was really cool.
Yeah.
But they can
He
be
was
very
just-
pushy. Like they can be very fucking pushy.
They can be,
I'd probably
especially
be a
when
pushy
they
ghost,
find
to be
that
honest.
you can actually that you can actually sense them and feel them.
Yeah, and they'll fuck
And-
with you, dude. They're ornery. Keep a lot of ornery spirits around. I connect with them and they...
Because you have ornery.
Yeah, because I'm just
energy.
ornery as fuck myself. The other night, I can't sleep. I'm having one of those nights and a fucking toy goes off. One of my kids' toys goes off and like 2, 3 in the morning. I'm like, you guys have me so fucked up right now. Like, leave me the fuck alone. Like, I am trying to sleep. I love you guys, but we got to set a boundary.
Yeah. Set a
Relax.
boundary.
And that's why it's so important, I feel like, to cleanse yourself after is to send
Yes.
that energy back to where it comes from so that it's not attaching to you. I always tell people that I do readings for when I'm doing mediumship and things like that. You can do what I do.
Yep.
You just have to be open to it.
Yeah,
and you
that's
just
a
have
good
to
message,
understand
yeah.
you need to protect yourself and take care of yourself and make sure that you learn about your intuition first. But the more you practice, you could do what I do.
Everybody
and I tell
can do
everybody
it.
that.
It's
We all
within
have
us.
gifts. Yeah. And all of us have something different to bring to the table, which is why I never feel like I'm in competition with anybody.
Yeah.
Just like our spray. Lexi brought over some spray today and it was amazing. And as soon as I sprayed it on myself, I was like, this
Lightheaded.
is so different than my spray. Because
Yeah.
my spray has a completely different vibration in it. You know what I mean? But we both have sprays.
Right.
Yeah.
They're not comparable to me.
No,
You know what I
they're
mean?
not.
They're so
Yeah.
different and they look the same. If you've seen your bottle and my bottle, the labeling's different, but they're the same clear liquid and they have the same bottles, I think. But girl,
As somebody who's used both of their sprays, and I don't make a spray, I can say that they're different energies and whatnot.
Yeah.
I always think of when people talk about any kind of spirituality, I'm just like, we're all on different paths to the same place,
Absolutely.
my friends.
And I think
Yeah.
a lot of times people will self-sabotage
absolutely.
and think, I can't do that.
Allow fear to take over.
For me, it was always within me to do this.
Right.
But I would push it down and I would deny that part of myself.
Right. Like suppress it.
But when I really started to focus on my spirituality, one thing opened the door to another
Yeah.
thing, to
That's
another
exactly
thing,
how it
to
goes.
another thing.
Like
And it
even
was
before
just
we
like,
came on here, how we saw the hummingbird and the bumblebee.
Okay,
Okay,
we
yeah.
have to tell you guys
Yeah.
this story.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we went outside to take a little breather before we recorded right now. And Lexi was like, oh, there's a little bumblebee beside you. So there's like a bumblebee around me. And then a few minutes later, we look up and there's this hummingbird.
I have feeders outside of my house, but it wasn't by one of the
It was
feeders.
up so
Yeah, and it was
was
just
out in the
looking at
open.
us.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just looking at us and dancing
Yeah.
and like
hovering and
hovering around us, like right
beautiful.
over our heads. And usually with hummingbirds, they'll come, they'll hover for a minute, and then they'll take off.
Yeah.
This one lasted for at least a good 5 solid minutes,
Yep.
just
Yeah.
right above us. And for a split second, it landed on a branch, stopped, and then it started flying over us again.
yeah,
Like,
right after we
right-
said, "Aren't your wings getting tired, buddy?"
Yeah, it
and
took a
then
little
like,
break.
for a second, for a split second.
And then when it finally flew away with the bumblebee.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was looking at it in the beginning, and I was like, "Ooh, I'm seeing spots," but it looked like static everywhere.
Oh, the energy.
And I looked away because I was like, damn, I'm seeing spots. And then Sahdi goes, do you guys see the glitter in the sky? And I was like, oh my God, yes, I did.
Everybody was seeing
Yeah.
it.
For me, like a good friend of mine, she was telling me how hummingbirds to her represent being present. And I found that a lot of the time when they come around me, they're saying to be present and to enjoy the moment. And then bee wise, I consider myself a messenger bee. Spirit's constantly using me as a vessel to communicate what needs to be said, obviously with boundaries, because you have to set boundaries with everything, even
Yeah.
yourself. But at the end of the day, I am a little messenger bee. Bumblebee specifically, when you don't have a lot of support in the physical world, the bumblebee resembles all of the support you have in the spiritual world. They come around to tell you, you have support.
Usually when I see a hummingbird, not every time, but most of the time it's after someone's passed. And I always think
Oh,
of the air
absolutely.
energy
Yeah.
with them, right? And their wings are going so fast and their heart's beating so fast. And I feel like they're in between
Oh,
worlds.
absolutely.
And with me, it feels like the hummingbird will always come down almost directly in my face. It
Same.
didn't today.
Yeah.
And it'll just stare at me for a second and hover. Mm-hmm. And it's like the whole world just slows down.
Yeah.
And the only thing I can focus on is that hummingbird in front
And it's got
of
that
me.
buzz.
And it's like that humming sound.
Yep.
Yeah,
right?
it's like their wings just going so fast.
And then it'll get my attention and then it'll just fly away.
It's like a frequency.
It
It's
definitely is
memorizing.
like a frequency.
Absolutely.
But every single time I felt a message within that.
when we were over here, the first license plate, because I'm big on numerology, 333. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We got a lot of confirmations tonight. Yeah.
Because we were supposed to record on a different night and it just didn't work.
Yeah.
And tonight we were like, we are in it tonight.
Yeah.
Okay, so everybody can do this, and I'm more beginner stage compared to the two of you. But the few experiences I've had, one of the recent ones, we did the Black Dahlia episode. I was seeing what Sahdi was channeling.
You're helping me channel
Elizabeth Short, and I could see it in my head. We have a mutual friend where her husband had passed away, and me and her were just messaging, and I could hear him, and I could almost see him. But I asked her a question. This is personal, so I'll leave it at that, because I was trying to sort out what was going on. And he goes, oh, fuck off, and walked away. And I told her he said that. She goes, that's him, 100%. And I was like, oh my God. I mean, he walked away from me.
Yeah.
Wasn't really having what I had to say, the questions, and I get it. But I probably should have lit some sage or cinnamon or something to clear my space after that to make sure he stayed away. He didn't want to stick around.
Right.
But that's something I'm learning now.
Yeah.
and we learn as we go.
Yeah.
just like that.
And something I've learned too is letting spirit say goodbye to the person they're connecting with. It's really big. Letting them say I love you and goodbye is huge, because then it's also some closure for them too of until next time. You know what I mean? But off of mediumship, I love doing mediumship readings because they always get really deep. One person whose whole family has actually come to me for readings, and I love this guy. They've asked a couple questions where he's like, it's better for them to just kind of not know what happened to me because it's just going to grow bitterness and resentment. But he loves the fuck out of his family, and it's crazy to see how much he's evolved his whole family and himself in spirit so quickly, because he's been gone for a little while, but he's done so much work so quick within his whole family.
Wait, is he passed on?
Yeah, so he's passed on.
I was like,
Yeah,
hold on.
sorry.
No, it's okay.
I also can connect to people's higher self. So I can also connect to people who are still alive and get messages from their higher self about what's going on with them. So like,
oh, that's cool.
So I was on TikTok. Like I enjoy TikTok live. So I'm on there doing readings.
Do you still do readings on
I
TikTok?
I do.
What's your TikTok tag?
It's Sanbea Tarot, SANBELLA Literally, I go live most through the week. There's Wednesdays I don't. And if I get super busy, privates are my priority. So if I get a private reading, I won't go live that day. But if I have nothing that I'm doing, why not offer the option to get a reading?
Yeah.
The other day, one of my people that supports all of my stuff, we've connected with her whole family, and she's been married to this guy for a really long time. And he was supposed to get a mediumship, but he was still kind of iffy about it. So he's like, can she just do it for me? And I'm like, that's totally fine, because they've been married for a long time. So in circumstances like that, I'll connect. And especially if he says it's okay, cool. She's like, just see who comes through. And I'm like, do you know enough about his family to make confirmations? She's like, yeah, we've got a long list and they're well known in their history and stuff. So I'm like, okay. Something had came up. I heard Freemasons. I was like,
my man's a Freemason.
I'm hearing that they're a part of a big organization. Like trying to get around it because it was just so quick that I was like, okay, well, let me just see what else comes up first, and then we'll get into that. It's like an open bar, and I'm just bringing in whoever from his family will come through. Mind you, there's a ton of people coming through, and I'm like going through different people that are coming in, and I'm just kind of explaining to her who they are as people, because I get close to the actual names. For me personally, their names don't come up like
Mine
that.
too.
Recently, I've been getting very close to the names. I did have it come up on one of them where it was between two, and it was actually one of the two. Just getting to see how deep you can get in mediumship is kind of cool. Obviously making sure that you're safe, and it's not something to be fearful of, truly, as long as you're protecting yourself. When people are like, is somebody sending me bad energy, or somebody sending me evil eye, or I'm like, if you protect yourself enough, you don't have to worry about that.
And we've talked about reversing.
Yeah, and most of the time you don't even need to do that.
No,
most of the time you just need to stay extra protected so that you don't, and get wards and stuff like that. I really love wards. Wards are ways to set protections and making sure that you know when bad energy is being sent to you. So you put intentions. There's different things you can do. For me, I like plant. You can give the plant a way of saying like, hey, I'm doing this spell. I'm going to connect it to you, and basically saying it's your job to let me know if this spell worked or not. If it didn't work, you're going to die. The plant would die, not the actual person.
Oh my God.
Sorry. That's tethering in witchcraft. Right. Sorry, but that's a whole different thing. But warding is more of saying this is extra protection.
Writing a spell on the bottom of your welcome mat.
Yeah. Or with salt or whatever you may use to
I do that. Like, I just didn't know what the correct word.
Yeah, so it's just adding like extra protections around, and it's like house. And there's so many different ways you can do them. Yeah, wind chimes are great.
I have the wind chimes because you told me. that?
When I don't have sage, I just grab a pot and pan, like a little spatula, and I just go around my house and clear the
before
energy.
you do readings and stuff like that to protect yourself before or after, you can do those. You can use bells, you can use tuning forks.
Yeah, you could use so many different herbs.
And if I can just add to that, for me, what I do is anytime I'm using a new herb that I've never used before, I try to connect with that herb and ask for permission.
In the herb spirit. Yeah, I learned that more recently, actually.
Yeah, and sometimes you can have an herb that's just like, you're not using me respectfully, so you can't use me.
Oh, yeah, they'll
like
ban
within
you
your
certain
experience.
spirits on that. Yeah.
And then I've had experiences where I've heard, you can't use these certain things, and I've held it and I've connected to it, or I've grown it myself, and I've connected with the spirit, not specifically white sage, but different
other herbs. Yeah.
And they're very welcoming with that. And the spirit comes through and moves through me. And even though I might not be attached to it through lineage or through DNA, they're allowing me to do it because I'm coming at it with such purity and asking permission.
For me, with my experience, just be respectful.
And that was your lesson with that. There was a couple that I was working with, and they moved in together. And as soon as they moved in together, they basically thought their house was haunted. They were having like poltergeist things going on, and he was black and she was white. And when I did the reading for them, I was like, whoa, yeah, you guys decided to move in together, but her ancestors and your ancestors are not getting along at all. Man. And they had just taken all of their stuff and put it together, photo albums together, and all these other things together. And so what ended up happening is they were able to talk to their ancestors, and they were able to separate them and be like, we love each other, and this is the union that we're coming through. If you don't want to be here, you don't have to support it. And being able to release that, because especially on his side, which he wasn't even aware of how strong the ancestor line was and how much they were a part of his life. Absolutely. He had been blocking that out, but his mother was very spiritual, and his mother was really into like shrines and offerings and ancestor money and things like that. And she had put protection and put his DNA on those ancestor shrines from the time he was a baby.
I love that.
So he was like super
she's been
protective,
setting his protection up,
and that's another thing, a part of the spirituality too. But it was just an aha moment for them, and it was a learning lesson for me, because I had never really seen that side of it before. Because when I do readings, it's usually one-on-one, right? And I was coming to this house thinking that I was going to have to ask some demons to leave because it was messing with the kids,
some loud family members.
Yeah,
his ancestors were even messing with her little kids, and stuff like that. But they're part of that lineage. Like in the spirit realm, it's a little bit different.
I have a grandfather that passed, and I love my grandfather to death. When he passed, he came through as a red cardinal, and when I moved here, he changed to blue cardinal, but they're called something else. Blue jay. Blue jay.
My grandma comes to me as a blue jay.
Yeah, and that's so funny. I get that confirmation. My son will sit outside and he'll talk to the blue jay that'll come and visit, because it's my grandpa, and so he knows red cardinals and blue jays are my grandpa.
Taking a video of this blue jay screaming outside, and I'm like,
Grandma.
I
saw a blue jay yesterday when I was visiting my mom. That's really weird.
Yeah.
There's so much synchronicity.
There is.
The three of us. And I really like how our energy is coming through, because we have Omni. You're saying that you're just kind of beginning.
Yeah.
But you're teaching me things. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And with Lexi too, I gave you a reading way back in the day, and I planted the seed, and I didn't even know how accomplished you were going to become within that. And like, I'm in awe of you. I learned from you as well.
When Sahdi was telling me about you, she was like, I gave her first reading, and she just went from, you didn't say 0 from 100, but that's the way I processed it. And you're like, we're on the same level. If not, she surpassed me, not in a competition way, but just like how beautiful it is to see.
I appreciate that.
And I think that's within every one of us, because we're grown up and we're taught math and science and blah, blah, blah. But if we were taught from a very young age, a lot of people think, I can't do it. Well, if nobody ever taught you how to do math, you would think you couldn't do math.
Right. Yep.
With you, Lexi, I don't mean to speak for you, but you had to deal with a lot of religious trauma that you had to go through. And then Omni's coming from a different place she was the flip side of that, where she was, and I'm kind of like somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. It is really cool.
So with anybody that's starting off, it's called a practice for a reason. Don't don't think that just because you're not as advanced as somebody else that you can't do it.
And what I love to tell people too, even in that sense, kids teach me something every day.
Yes.
My kids teach me shit every fucking day.
Keep
They
your
teach
minds
me to
open.
be a better person. They teach me to be a kinder person, a more patient person. Like my kids teach me so much. I think we're all on the same path. And like you said, just
Different paths to the same place.
yeah. And if you have been given a gift, you're feeling this inside of you, try it. And if you try it and you don't like it, you never have to do it again.
Yeah.
That's my motto. If you hold yourself back because of fear, you're never going to improve. And
Exactly.
you're always going to be
And
stuck
go
in the
with
same
what you're
place.
called to do. Like I had been called to tarot way before that lady ever put that deck in my hand.
Right.
And I always thought it was so cool, you know, psychics and mediums and
Yeah.
stuff like that, having no idea what was inside of me.
Yeah, I grew up in a
You
Protestant
know?
Christian family. Long skirts, long sleeve shirt. You have to go to church. Everybody's real shady. They got their church hats on. They're ready to, you know, talk their shit and make fun of people's church outfits. It was so wrapped up in the family. And I had came out as an atheist at one point, and everybody's like, how dare you? And
Yeah.
like all this stuff. And then I ended up going through where I met Creator through Christianity. And I was actually baptized and everything again, but I never really fit in.
Yeah.
Logically, I always felt connected to God, to Creator, to whatever universe, whatever you want to call
Source,
it,
yeah.
spirit. Yeah. I always felt connected, but I never felt like under the pretenses and the judgments that Christianity had, which is like, if you're gay, that's an abomination. I don't believe in that. I think you should love who you love. And if fucking we were all meant to be the same, there would be no purpose to this life. And I think that we have so much to learn from people and their experiences. Of course, you don't understand the perspective of a transgender person if you're not transgender, but if you could listen, you could hear them out.
Empathy.
You can get, you
Do
can
shadow work
you
and
can,
learn
yeah,
empathy.
yeah, and accept people. This journey is hard, no matter who you are. And I tell people, I don't push spirituality on anybody. And it's not hard in the sense that beautiful things don't manifest and come from it. And it's not the best thing you've ever done, but it's, you get deep into your shadows and you learn to accept yourself fully for who you are. And that gets deep and it gets dark and it gets very beautiful. But there's so much self-empowerment that comes from that.
Right. So if we were spiritually numb and not aware of ourselves, when we saw that hummingbird, we wouldn't even have noticed that. And that's kind of the thing too. Once you start becoming spiritual, it doesn't matter what religion you have or whatever, when you really start tuning into that spirituality, that spiritual part of yourself, you start noticing things that you never noticed before.
Numerology,
you start numbers start popping up,
signals,
synchronicities, symbols. It's just crazy. So when we make
everything's
that
just so
conscious,
connected. It's so fucking weird, but it's cool. It's just all connected.
As you get that consciousness and it awakens.
Yeah.
It's like an arm that had been numb forever. You've been able to use it, but you couldn't really feel it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden those tingling sensations come and you're just like, what the fuck?
I love the way you
It's
do
like,
that.
it's like going from religion to something like this, where religion just made no sense. There's Noah's Ark. Christianity is not even the first religion that's ever, this just doesn't make sense. Going from that to actually getting confirmation, getting proof right in front of my face if I ask for it.
Yeah.
And obviously it's not always on your time, but if you say, show me 4 crows in a square for whatever reason, they
You
might
ask
not
for
do it
certain
exactly
symbols.
how you want it, but they'll still show you
But you're gonna see 4
sometime at
crows
somewhere. Yeah, like in the sky, and
Yep.
they all happen to be in this.
Formation, or you see it 4
Yeah,
different
or
times
it's
during
like-
the day in a book that you're reading.
Yeah.
When I first started really awakening, my husband's mom passed away. We were super close. I had just seen her the weekend before, and we were laughing in the kitchen because her ring got stuck on her finger and we couldn't get it off.
Oh.
And we're just dying laughing. She's like, this is serious. And I'm like almost peeing my pants because I'm laughing at her so hard. We're trying everything to get it off. And yeah, she thought she was going to have to go to the hospital. But anyway, she died a few days later suddenly. She was the one that came to me first. Full apparition.
Oh, wow.
She was taking my finger and making it into an infinity symbol, moving my hand around, and she was right there with me. And
How
so
beautiful.
it was beautiful. But then I opened myself up to that. And I remember coming home a couple days later, and there was this shadowy figure of this little boy just sitting on my bed.
Oh.
And I came in and I had to do a double take because I just worked the
Right.
graveyard shift. I'm like, am I just fucking tired and
Yeah.
seeing shit? And then I closed my eyes and he looked at me. And he looked so sad. And I freaked out. I fucking ran out of the room,
Yeah.
shut the door. And it was because I had opened up something within myself.
Yeah.
For somebody that I loved.
Right.
And it was a beautiful experience and really crazy. But then I opened this portal. I didn't know what to do with that, which that might have been there anyway. And like I was saying, I was spiritually numb to it. So I wasn't able to see those things before. So when these things really start popping up to you, there can be a scary side to it.
Yeah.
So anybody that's just starting out and starting to learn those things, it's part of the process.
Make sure you cleanse.
Make sure you're protected. Make sure you're cleansed. But also look at it as I've asked for my eyes to be open. I've asked to be spiritually open. You're going to get things that are meant for you.
Right.
And sometimes when it does happen, it's leading you down your path further. Like me getting in contact with you in the beginning, I had somebody sending a hex on me and I was shown it in my dream. I didn't even know Sahdi did. I knew she did a reading, but I didn't know she was spiritual like that at all.
Right.
Somebody's mentioned in passing and her name popped in my head when I was in the bathtub because I'm connected to water and I just knew it. And she dropped everything to come over. That was kind of worrisome because I woke up in the middle of the night straight out of bed. My mom's like yelling in my head. My mom's passed on.
Yeah.
Put protections up. I've talked about this several times on the show,
Yeah.
but that was my aha moment.
Mine was a little more gruesome than that. I'm not going to lie. The 2 first apparitions I ever seen were actually scary. So the first one is I lived in Colorado still. This was way before I got into spirituality. And my mom had a townhome. One night I'm sleeping in my bed, everything's normal. And I see this huge black figure. And I'm waking up in the middle of the night and it's got these beet red eyes. And you know, I don't care who believes me and who doesn't. I really don't give a fuck. I know what the fuck I saw. And I tried to not see it. My heart dropped to my fucking asshole. I'm not even gonna lie. I couldn't move. I was just looking at it, just walking through my room.
I'm sorry. I'm picturing a butthole with a heartbeat now.
Sorry. Yeah.
My spirit guides are funny.
Yeah. No,
okay, keep going. Sorry.
No, you're fine. It's one of those energies where you're just like, holy shit, like, you're
cold.
way too powerful. You immediately feel fearful. As it gets to the wall, it turns around and looks at me. And that's how I saw its eyes. And it looked at me and I was frozen. There's nothing you can even do. And it just looked at me for a while. I covered my eyes and I brought it back up and he was still there just staring at me. And so I just covered my head.
I got that a lot when I was a kid too.
That was the only time I experienced something that
I grew
extreme.
up with shadow beings. I've had what they call sleep paralysis a couple times where I've actually felt like entities were on top of me. But those are always during
traumatic.
So in that aspect, it wasn't like, oh, the first one I saw was his mom, but it was the first mediumship that I had encountered. I had encountered shadow beings and demonic entity energy. We had a friend spending the night and he was an atheist. Uncle Jesse, he did not believe in any of that. And we had told him stories like the kids were saying that this shadow figure would shake their bed and I would see it out of the corner of my eye and it looked like this tall guy on stilts almost, but it was a shadow and he would go back and forth through the bedrooms and he was on me through sleep paralysis and stuff like that.
Did he have a hat?
He did. Yeah, he looked like he was walking on stilts. Just, oh my God, he was so scary. And everybody in the house knew that we had him. And the people that lived there before, we knew them. And they said that they experienced the same thing. That's pretty much why they moved out.
Right.
Thanks.
It's like 5 o'clock in the morning. And we had been up, we had had a couple drinks and he decided to spend the night. And all of a sudden we hear crying. This grown man outside of our bedroom door. And he's, that's all we can hear. And we didn't know what it was. Like we got up and I opened up the door and he's just standing there frozen. Tears coming down his face and he could only make that sound.
Oh my
He couldn't
God.
speak.
Man.
Nothing.
Was in shock.
Right. He was in total shock and he's just standing there and his whole body is just shaking. Damn. So I jump up, my ex-husband jumps up and we go and we get him on the couch and we put a blanket on him. We're like finally calmed him down. And he's like, this fucking thing was hovering over me. This tall man was hovering over me. And I woke up and it was just staring at me. And then it got up and then it walked back towards me again. He's like, I was trying to adjust to the light thinking my eyes were playing tricks on me or something because he had never seen anything like this before. Didn't believe in it.
Right.
It believes in you.
Right. And they love to prove people wrong.
Yeah, he got up to get away from it. For some reason, we have this croquet stick in our garage. I don't know why. He said that the shadow picked it up and he was running towards the door to get into the house and it threw it at him. And I was like, oh, I got to go check this out. I go outside. And that fucking croquet stick is stuck through my wall.
Oh. Why didn't he like him?
Well, probably because he said he didn't believe in him.
Yeah.
He was talking shit. We were all having a couple drinks. We were talking about it. And he was just like full-fledged, don't believe in that shit. You guys are fucking crazy.
Yeah, like probably mocking it. You have to be respectful. It's just always good to be respectful.
Yeah, like the ghost hunters and stuff like that. I'm not saying anything bad if you're a ghost hunter out there.
No,
but
I love
you see
ghost
these
hunters.
ghost hunters and they antagonize them. You can go in respectfully. A long time ago, we went out in the middle of the woods where this girl had apparently been murdered years ago. And all the kids said that they would see her out there and stuff. So we went out with a recorder with a professional ghost hunter.
Oh, wow.
And he would even tell us, okay, no whispering. Nobody can whisper because that'll pick up on the recording as, you know, something paranormal. He was very clear on the rules.
Yeah.
And we got out there, we put the recorder down. And at the end, he was like, okay, little girl, if you don't talk to us, we're going to go. And that was it. Nothing. So we got home and he hooked it up to the computer and we played it back. And at that time where we only heard silence, the recorder picked up on a little girl's voice saying, 1, 2, 3, go. Because he said, if you don't talk to us, we're going to go. So I believe in all of that.
My mom grew up in a haunted house and she wrote about it in a book. I don't believe it's in publishing anymore. Beyond Appearances by Christy Harrington. And it was in Alvin, Illinois. And there's a whole chapter about the room with the cowboy wallpaper. And she's the oldest out of 4 siblings. And each kid would go to sleep in that room and wake up crying and couldn't stay in that room. And so finally she went to sleep in that room and she woke up. And in the closet was a man, big burly man with overalls and a straw hat on. It was a man of color, just staring at her. And basically she just looked at him, knew that he wasn't a threat. My mom was psychic. She was a kid at the time or younger at the time. What she gathered was that that house was a part of the Underground Railroad.
That's fucking
that
cool.
Closet was an elevator shaft and he was trying to get people down and the rope broke and he died. But that house eventually it had poltergeists at times where when she got older, she moved back in, but it burnt down twice. So it burnt down and
They said, get the fuck out.
I heard these stories growing up and there's a picture and if you look
like
at the
not
picture,
me seeing shit walk in. I'm like, come on, Mel, don't do that right now.
I know we're all talking about it.
I know. I'm like, hold on now.
But we see in this picture this figure in the window and it's a spirit that they captured on a picture and it was after part of it burned down.
Yeah.
And it's a man with a straw hat. That my mom's passed on. I want to track down this picture so bad just to show you guys.
But it's funny, like a lot of us as kids, we pick up on paranormal things.
Oh yeah, I definitely
Big
believe
time.
that we're more
I
connected.
knew I had past lives when I was a kid and nobody could tell me anything else. I remember talking about my past lives with my mom when I was a kid and I don't remember what I said, but I remember always bringing them up. And my mom obviously thought I was crazy, so she didn't remember any of them. But I was like, if my kids fucking come up to me and tell me about their fucking past lives, I'm journaling that shit.
Yeah, my mom still remembers that I used to come to her. I would say, remember when the other lady was my mom?
There was a trend on TikTok where parents were recording their kids saying stuff like
I
this.
do remember that.
Yeah, my kid said that when she listened to Janis Joplin, she goes, oh yeah, I used to sing this when I was older. And I was like, no, baby, you never listened to this before. And she goes, no, I used to sing this on stage when I was older. And I was like, girl,
cool.
keep
That
you
was
away from
older.
that whiskey. Yeah.
No, that's cool.
But
Tying all of that in together, that we are naturally born
especially
to do
kids.
this.
Yeah.
When we're a child, we're just coming from the other realm
Yeah.
and into this third dimension.
And there's still that knowledge that's there before the world kind of takes it from you.
So whenever you're starting on your journey to doing anything like this, spiritual, psychic, mediumship, or whatever, it's just tapping into your natural resources, what's already there but has been denied.
I think it's cool when you're interacting with people who are talking about their experiences and things like that, because I think it helps us to understand how to better respect spirit, because I feel like that's really what they're asking, is for their certain spaces to be respected, certain spaces to be valued and understood. Super important to treat spirits with respect because they deserve it. They're genuinely trying to help. Even when I was a kid, I remember I would hear somebody tell me to tell somebody something, and so I'd say it. And that's why as I've gotten old, I've always been a messenger bee. I've always been just one of those people they use to communicate. A lot of the people I was around, even when I was a kid, were very suicidal. My mom was very suicidal. Being able to help them work through these really dark times has always been what I've done. And so as something that I get to do and I'm passionate about and I love, because I think that knowledge is a gift. I think wisdom is a gift. And I think that us sharing our stories and working through our fears is one of the best ways to regain that personal power.
I agree.
Working to learn the difference between fear and intuition, I think, is one of the hugest parts too.
Right.
If you can figure out a reason why you're you're scared, that's not your intuition, because your intuition's not going to make you scared of what's going to happen or what somebody's going to think.
It's the lack of knowledge that make people so fearful.
Yeah, it's the fear of the unknown is really what it is. It's one of those things where your intuition is always going to tell you to make the move that's going to better yourself. You just have to be mindful and just be aware. If you feel it in your gut,
in your bones.
Yeah, in your bones, exactly. But if you're just like, there's this new opportunity coming up, it could be a really good move for me. I don't know if my fear and my intuition's telling me to just not go. And I always just tell people to take a step back. What do you have the potential to be scared of? If you can't think of anything, or if it's just something that's obviously kind of trivial, oh, I'm scared of what people are going to think, then you know that that's just fear. Because fear will try and move you away from your goal too. It'll shift you around your path, and you can always get back to your path. Sometimes we get distracted, or sometimes we get in cycles and we just kind of veer off for a little bit, but you're always welcome to come back when you're ready. And I think that's the most beautiful part, is there's no pressure in any of this. It's just really getting to authentically feel and be in tune and getting this beautiful knowledge and being able to have spirit be kind enough to help us maneuver through this life.
Yeah.
And once you really learn what spirit feels like and you're channeling that energy, I have a quick story. So one day my friend came over, and she came over because she needed a reading. And we went out on the back porch and we were just chilling before the reading, and she's telling me the stuff that's going on with her. And I'm like, girl, this, that, the other thing. And I was giving her my advice. Yeah. What my thoughts were, right?
Yeah.
And so I told her this whole big thing, right? So then we go back in, I start to channel. And I got schooled with her spirit guys. They're like,
you don't know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Wait a minute.
They're like, girl,
and they
you're giving the wrong
contradicted me
advice.
every single thing that I said. They were like, nope. This
Wrong,
is the
right.
way, right? Yeah,
Wrong.
And it's so funny the way that
Don't
that
speak
works.
for
I was
us.
like almost embarrassed. I'm like, oh my god. So
You're
remember
like,
when I
well,
told you
I was wrong on this.
Yeah,
like, I was a
sorry.
little bit
they're
off.
taking a whole different spin
Yeah,
on
they're-
forget everything I just said.
Right.
Yeah.
They're humbling me
This
today.
is still
so.
me,
Right.
but no.
Yeah.
But how beautiful is that of you to listen to them and to step outside your ego to deliver that message?
Yeah, because it's also your bias of what you think is best. But that's why I tell people to, as a way of getting consent, my readings are paid for. Even on TikTok, I do them for a lot cheaper because it's quicker. And that payment is consent. And so when I don't have that payment, I'm like, listen, if you don't have the money, I can give you advice for me.
Yeah.
But that's not going to be that help. Like, it's going to
Right.
be helpful, but it's going to be way more helpful for you to get a message from spirit.
Right.
You know, if I feel called to give somebody a free reading, I obviously am still going to do that and respect that. But for the most part, that's how I get my consent. When people are at the point where they're like, I don't really have it, I'm like, that's totally fine. It's like $20. So it's like, whenever you have the chance to set aside $20, life is hard right now. I'll be here.
Yeah.
And it's not a rush, because I also want to help people who want to be helped. I'm not trying to help people who just want to complain and hear all the problems
Energy
about their life.
vampires,
And
yeah.
and just want sympathy or pity. Not to say
You have
that
to
like
value
people
your
don't
own
need
time.
to. Yeah. And not only just that, their feelings are valid. Where I'm at, I want to help people who want to be helped, because we're going to get a lot further that way. If you're not ready, that's okay. And whenever you're ready, I'll be here. I'll help. Until then, you've really got to focus on yourself first. And there's nothing I can do for you in that
It
sense.
took me a long time to get to that level, because when
Yeah.
I first started off, and I think that's fine too.
Oh,
When
absolutely.
you're first starting out, do it for free.
Absolutely.
And I always used to say when I was doing free readings that this is a gift that I'm given.
Yeah.
And it's like charging somebody for a Christmas present that I got. So that's the way that my mind worked then. And then once I started getting really good at what I was doing,
Right.
and really channeling and really getting into source energy,
Right.
it can be draining.
Yeah.
It's like a muscle. If you haven't worked it and all of a sudden you're working this muscle, it's going to hurt.
Yeah.
It's going to feel depleted. And then I started getting to the point where I started shifting my awareness within that, because money
Yeah.
is energy. And my readings are a little bit expensive.
They're worth
You know,
it.
they're $125
It's not
a
bad.
reading. And
Compared to others, that's nothing.
I love that you value yourself enough to charge what you think you're fucking worth, because you're worth it. And that's why I don't talk
Yeah.
about people's prices. If you charge what the fuck you think you're worth, and I love that.
But you have to be getting something back. So even if you're like,
Yeah.
okay,
It's an
you're-
energy
you're
exchange is what I like.
It really is. And I started getting to the point with people around me that were like, oh, you need to do my cousin's cards, or you need to do
Yeah.
my sister's cards, you need to do my mom's cards. my friend's mom just died. I need you to do a reading. At first, that was really rewarding for me to have the experience to do that and the validation to do that. But then after a while, I started feeling like I was being used.
Yeah, you're like, I'm not
like nobody was calling me to just go out to dinner, or like let's go hang out, or how are you? It was like, girl, I need you to come do
help.
this.
Help me. Yeah.
And then it wasn't even
people were expecting it from you
because it was free. I feel like some certain people would take that and they wouldn't even pay attention to what I was saying.
Yeah, it's like almost too readily available to them that they take advantage of it.
And so once I put like a price on it,
only people who were serious.
Yeah.
And
the people that I was doing free readings before, I'll be like, okay, well, I'll charge you half because you're my friend, but you have to pay.
Right, and as you should.
I noticed, wow, like the difference is the people that I would do that for, I'd put a price on it, and then all of a sudden it was like they were really listening because they paid money to listen to what I had to say at this point.
And they prepare for it. They're like, okay, well, I'm getting this reading. It's not like an everyday thing. What do I want to hone in on?
Absolutely. Everybody has gifts, right? Doctors are gifted at having steady hands and being very logical about chaotic situations and how to make things work to save people's lives, right? But they charge an arm and a leg for their gift. Even $125 doesn't match up to a $10,000 medical bill just for you going to the ER if something bad happens. You know what I mean? Everybody's gifted. Singers are gifted. You're going to get mad at them for going on stage for a price.
It's a lot of that within the spiritual community.
There's a lot of people that are less gifted than, in my opinion. They don't put in the time and effort you do into your readings where you travel to people and you take the time to give them the correct reading. They charge $500 for a video chat reading. That's not as caring
I'm
as
still
you.
on the lower end of the spectrum with price because I want it to be available
for people.
Everyone. And there are still some times where I'll just be called to give a reading to somebody.
It's like spiritual karma.
Return.
Yeah.
I'm giving back.
Yeah, it's like an offering almost.
But also setting boundaries. We were talking about this off air a little bit, but you were talking about really tapping in and listening to your higher self and your spirit guides and putting up boundaries. We've kind of touched on that a little bit, but I noticed where I'll talk to you, Sahdi, about some things, or like we were on air a few times and you were like, nope, my spirit guides are saying no.
Oh yeah. It's important to listen.
It's like, that's so cool.
Yeah. Well, it's frustrating at first because they're teaching you to be obedient. It's almost like a parent with a child, right? I need you to listen for your safety.
Yeah.
I need you to listen so that I can make sure that this works out the way you want it to work out, that you need it to work out.
And you can't see the whole picture, so it's frustrating.
Yeah. So you're just like, dude, why can't I do what I want to do? One time I threw paper into the trash can instead of the recycling. And my guides were like, get that fucking paper out of the trash can and put it in the recycling. And I was like, I'll just make sure next time I do it. And they were like, get that paper out of the fucking trash can and put it in the recycling. And I was like, okay. At that point, I knew if you're saying it multiple times and you're not just, okay, do better next time, you're being serious. And so I go and I get it out. But times that I've chose to be stubborn in those moments, it's always bitten me in the ass. And so it's not obedience in the sense of that, but it's like teamwork, being able to listen sometimes, because not all the time are you going to have all the answers, and spirit can see the bigger picture of what's going on. So if you can listen and take that step back, they can really help you.
Yeah. And it may seem stupid to you to have to go pick that paper out of the garbage and put it into recycling, but it's a butterfly effect.
Yeah, it's a lesson. It's a principle. It's valuing Earth and valuing the fact that we're able to be here and Earth allows us to be here. I connected to a tree. I have a tree outside my house and I connect to her a lot. She's a beautiful being. And she showed me that what humans did to them was what we are so fearful of aliens doing to us, coming down and killing off the human race or whatever. And that's what we did to trees, and that's what we did to nature. I love spirituality. I genuinely do. I love witchcraft. I love all that shit because I just feel like it genuinely just makes sense. Everything's connected. Everything is so strong and powerful, and being able to heal people on such a deep level is just
beautiful.
It's just a gift.
Yeah, I consider myself an omnia, so I believe there's truth in all religions as long as it's not being used as a weapon.
Is that why you go by Omni?
I didn't know what an omnius was. I didn't even know it existed. I was given the name through meditation, my spiritual name.
Cool.
And that's because I was talking to Sahdi about how she got her spiritual name. I've always known her by Sahdi.
Oh, really?
And
that's
I was meditating in the bathtub and it came to me. And I even texted her. She was the first person I texted. And I said, is this like something obvious? Have you heard this somewhere? And it's just because it was clear as day in my head over and over again. Omni, 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 Omni. I was like, have you heard this? Like, is this Thor or something? And I just don't know what I'm relating it to. She's like, no, I've never really heard that name. And then when I was reading, I came about an omnius and I was like, oh my God, that is my belief. I kind of believe in everything.
Yeah.
So before I knew what that was and I knew the word for it, I was given my spiritual name Omni.
Oh, that's cool. And so you got to grow into that name too
Yeah.
as you've grown in your spiritual. That's
It was
beautiful.
validation too, to feel validated. Just to circle back to tarot real quick, because there was a few tricks as the newest newbie in the room. Everybody's different. Everybody goes about everything different. And even with channeling. So I have a friend that was connecting to her spirit guides, doing a meditation. You can get it on YouTube. You can listen to music that in the hertz of connecting to your higher
Frequency,
self. You will probably get a
solfeggio.
headache. I did.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a muscle. So she connected to her spirit guides, and she said, I knew it was a male energy because when he talked, she heard their voice. He talked from, I think, the right side or the left side. I can't remember which side, but she's like, is that right? And I was like, it's right for you. And I explained how what I thought, because when mediums talk about different languages, and we talked about at the very beginning of this,
Right.
how you're shown certain symbols that you connect to certain things.
Right.
Well, for her, connecting to her spirit guides, the right side was male, the left side was female. I might have that switched
interesting.
around, but you get the point.
No, yeah.
Yeah. So that's important to know, that you have your own language, you have your own way of interpreting, and it's very personal. Now, when we went over tarot, Sahdi does something with her tarot deck that I resonate with, and my partner does something a little bit different. So when she asks a question, you ask a clarifier. That's the right word, right?
Most of the time I do, because sometimes it's a gray area with a certain card. So I'll ask a question, and then what I'll do is, because I use a bunch of different decks, and I'll go to the deck that I'm called to, and I'll be like, let me have a clarifier on that. Like,
I do. Yeah, I do that.
let's get more into detail
details,
on why
yeah.
that's here, because sometimes it's instant.
Yeah.
You know, I'll just know exactly what that is.
Right.
And we can go as deep as we want to with it. And sometimes it's kind of like this gray area. And
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, well, you're touching the surface on that, but I'm not understanding fully.
Yeah.
So I'll use the tarot as a clarifier to ask that question again and ask if it can show me more clearly with it.
Yeah. So for somebody who's a little bit newer, this was amazing, because I'm like, okay, I got 2 of swords. I can kind of decipher what that means in the question I'm asking my deck. So when you shuffle your deck, you're asking the question in your head. You can say it out loud, whatever. One of the things you said is if it flips out, that means spirit is saying, get this one. That's been one thing where I shuffle until I really feel it. But when I flip it up and I'm like, okay, I got 2 of swords, I sit there, I think on it. Can I have a clarifier on this? And I pull another one.
And it's perfectly
Right.
fine to do that.
That for me, that resonates. Now, my partner thinks it is rude to ask your deck the same question twice. And even with the clarifier, he doesn't feel comfortable. And that's perfectly fine. He doesn't feel comfortable asking for, can you clarify that? He feels like you have to ask a different question according to the first question. You have to ask like a connecting question. You can't just be like, can you clarify that? Because he feels like, okay, that's kind of like asking the same question twice and it's rude.
I thought you were talking about if you're reading for yourself and you're like, show me this card if this is what you're talking about, or show me this card, and you're just asking the same thing over and over again, or is this deity talking to me? Throw out
when you're reading
this,
for yourself,
it's so
things
fucking
can
patient.
It's so ridiculous.
you're like, wait a minute.
You know what's crazy? When I read for myself, I pull only from the Osha deck.
Yeah, because a lot of times when we're reading for ourselves, we're like, no, that was the wrong card.
I get
Well,
readings from other
actually-
readers. Support other readers,
support
guys.
other readers,
If
for
you are a
sure.
reader, support other readers. Don't be a dickhead.
I have tarot decks dedicated to certain deities that I work with. So I have 3 decks dedicated to 3 different deities. One of them is
Right.
my higher self.
Right.
For me, that helps me connect to them better
Yeah.
and speak to them better.
And they ask different things of different people.
Yeah.
It's all about what your lesson is and what you're trying to learn and how they're trying to get lessons across to you. I always think of deities more of like teachers to me.
Yes.
Some are going to be around only for a lesson or 2, or as long as they need to be around for you to get the lesson you need from them. Some teachers you know about that are way ahead of you. When you're in 3rd grade and you know the 7th grade teacher, you don't know them, but you've heard their name or something.
You know you're gonna get to them.
First off, they're not here to coddle you. They're not here to fucking wipe your ass. When you come at them, make sure you have solid questions so that you can get that clarity. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I think it's important to actually get clarity instead of just kind of assuming you already know what you're talking about. Whereas like when I thought you were saying that, I thought you meant literally asking the same question more than once, which I do think they ask you to trust your intuition.
Yeah.
So if you're pulling multiple cards, you're not trusting yourself, meaning you're not trusting spirit.
And also, sometimes they don't want to answer a question.
Yeah.
Because I've asked questions before, you know, people are like, oh, is this happening? Or what happens with my job? Or very 3rd dimensional questions. Usually they won't.
Yeah. Well, Sahdi, when you were pulling for my higher self said, I can't tell you everything.
Yeah.
And actually, Omni's going to love putting the pieces together on
and
who my
that's-
higher self was. And it was 2 years of signs that came all together.
Yeah. And that's another thing too, because sometimes spirit is like, you are on this journey And if we were to give you all the answers right now, it would
invalidate your journey.
It's not beneficial for you.
Some things you have to learn, and some things do need to be told to you and brought to your attention, especially if Spirit's been trying to tell you
and you're just
for
not
a long
getting
time,
it.
and that person hasn't been listening.
Right.
And then when you give them that's confirmation to them. They're like, oh my God, I've known that. I know what you're saying is
That's
true.
why I'm connected to
and
water.
This is validating it now, and thank you for that. But then there's some things, and I don't have a problem with this, but sometimes I will get people asking very third dimensional questions. And they're not really listening to the fourth, fifth, and sixth dimensional answers.
Yeah, they want to hear what they want to hear. Am I going to see this guy that I like tomorrow? And I always tell them straight off the bat, I'm like, are you going to make it happen? Because if you are, then yes. If not, then no.
Or I can tell you why you haven't gotten pregnant. I can't tell you exactly when you went. And sometimes I can do that. I can tap into blocks that people have in their aura, in their energy field, in different blocks they have. And they've been trying to have a baby. And sometimes you can spiritually, sometimes there is a medical problem, but sometimes it's an actual spiritual.
Yeah. And spirit babies will come through. My actual babies here came through. Sahdi actually caught up when I was still pregnant with my son.
That's right.
And she was like, I see a little girl. I had a dream that he was a boy, and I knew he was a boy, but she said girl, so I got like, oh my God, I'm gonna have a little girl, and so then I had a son, and I was like, oh, and then I ended up getting pregnant right after.
She was trying to come through. He just beat her to the punch.
I needed him here first, and I needed her here second. I needed them when they came, and that's actually Sanbea is owed to my children. Sanbea Tarot, my kids' names are a part of that, and it's because it's so important. It's so special to me, and they're so special to my journey, and they mean everything. And so when it comes to my spirituality, I owed to them, because when I was pregnant is when I was closest to death, which is why I was closest to spirit, which is when I tapped in so deep. So when you're saying 0 to 100, it's because I was so close to spirit too. I got to experience such in-depth, because when you're pregnant, you're bringing your
portal's opening up.
Well, you have two souls in one body.
Yeah. And one time Junior got a picture of when I was pregnant with my daughter. He was like, what the fuck are you doing? I'm just in my car. And he's like, are you pulling cards or what the fuck? Who's behind you? I look behind me and I'm like, it's dark as fuck. I'm like, there's nobody behind me. What are you talking about? He takes a picture on his phone. There is a white face. It's an older woman, and she's just staring at me through the back window of my car. She's looking in at me, almost like a crone. I ended up saging my neighbor's house because I felt there was something there. And I was like, just because we have connecting houses, let me do yours too. Because I'm saging mine, let me sage yours, because I knew they didn't. And so while I was saging, one room I went into, every time I tried to go in there, their fire alarm would go off like crazy. Every fucking time. It did not want me in there. And so when they came home, I was like, there's something in that back room. There's something in there that it's attached to. And my neighbor goes, oh, well, I have my ex-boyfriend's mom's spell book in that room. And he was not a good person. And his mom, it was just searching. So I had to do a huge cleansing, and I told them, you need to burn that book.
So if you have something bad like that that's holding bad energy, it is best to burn.
With that situation, I asked a few people on what they thought was best, and that was the advice that I got, was if you want it gone, a quick way to do that is to burn it. Okay. And that's why they say with Ouija boards and stuff like that, I don't fuck with none of that shit. You pull out a Ouija board, I'm out.
Yeah.
There's something about them that's different, and I don't know how to explain it, but
it's the back door.
Yeah, I was going to say Sahdi's explained it as the back door.
Yeah.
I feel like Ouija boards, it's okay if you want to use them, but it's a portal.
I made one for my part. Well, listen though, this will make you feel more comfortable.
Listen, Linda.
Listen, Linda. I made one for my partner, and I put some Freemason symbols on it. He is a Freemason, so it's funny you brought that up, because he had a antique one that he found, and it meant a lot to him in a house, and so I made a replica of that one. I keep it in a shadow box with the door shut. I also resined protective crystals on the back of it, and I have sage and selenite on top of that shadow box, and it stays closed.
Yeah.
We don't use it. I've gotten it out for Sahdi before, and she's like, ooh, it's making me nauseous.
Everybody's entitled to do whatever the fuck they want, but I'm not trying to be around it.
And yeah, it's a back door to the lower dimension, so it's lower dimensional spirits.
I'm good on that.
Yeah.
I've seen enough evil. And not to say that anything you pull from it is going to be evil. I don't feel the need to do that. Yeah. And that's just me personally. And I know people who do that.
I mean, if you think about baby dolls, right? Little girls.
This is going to make me spiral.
But little girls, they have their babies,
right.
And they put a lot of energy into them. And anything that you put your energy into like that,
She's like, nope, I don't like the energy that was put into that.
Yep, I'm good. And again, anybody else can do what they want and have possessed dolls and all that shit. I'm not down. I'm not down.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that wraps up our episode on divination, spirituality, and tarot. Lexi, thank you so much for being on here.
Thank you for having me. Yeah. I really appreciate you guys allowing me to come on here and speak about how I feel and my views. I appreciate you listening and hearing me out.
We value your views.
You guys also being vulnerable and sharing stuff about yourselves. I really appreciate that.
Yeah. As always, I will say, don't forget to keep your mind open.
Namaste.